We dive into another crossover Thursday, this time with Locked On Vikings, next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I am your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. This episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. And we return here with a Thursday edition of the show, which does mean it is another crossover Thursday. We'll be diving into the Ravens and Vikings matchup with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings in the second and the third segments. But here in this first segment, I do just want to go over some general Ravens news, notes, and quotes, talking about the Wednesday injury report, also talking about just some things that both coaches and players had to say. And with the injury report, talking about how it impacts potentially today's injury report, also Fridays, depending on if those guys practice. Can they play? Will they not play? All things to consider for sure. So let's dive right into it all here. Before we do that, though, if you are following along with us here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you are enjoying our content. I appreciate everybody who's already subscribed so far. Our first goal here on Locked On Ravens is just 1,000 subscribers, a big number. It's going to be a big milestone when we hit it. But we've been growing, and I really appreciate everybody who has contributed to that so far and everybody who watches our videos here. If you're following along with us in audio form, so whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, don't worry. I definitely appreciate everybody who's doing that too. We started out in audio form, so it's been a really nice journey for me here on Locked On Ravens, and I really do appreciate it each and every day. Be sure to follow us both in video and audio form if you want to. Our content comes out on both platforms Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern time. And also be sure to follow me on Twitter at ChaosStriker34 and the Locked On Ravens Twitter account at Locked On Ravens. So with all that being said, let's dive right into it here, starting off with our Ravens news, notes, and quotes, and starting out with the injury report. So for Wednesday's injury report, I'll read through it, we'll dive into it, and we'll talk about it. So for Wednesday, outside linebacker Justin Houston did not participate in practice. He had a rest day. Quarterback Tyler Huntley was battling an illness, so he did not practice. Offensive lineman Patrick McCarry with an ankle, he did not participate. Running back Latavius Murray also with an ankle injury, did not participate. Wide receiver Sammy Watkins with a thigh injury did not practice as well. And also defensive tackle Brandon Williams with a shoulder injury did not practice. And also it was reported by Jess Rebeck and people who attended practice on Wednesday that Derek Wolfe did not practice with his injuries. And the reason he's not actually listed on the actual injury report is because he's not technically activated off of injured reserve yet. The Ravens designated him to return, but that doesn't mean he's actually off of the list and counts against the 53-man roster at this point. So because he doesn't count against the roster right now, he doesn't have to be on the actual injury report, but he also did not practice. So looking at this injury report, I know a lot of people may be a bit disappointed by the fact that players such as Latavius Murray and Sammy Watkins and even Derek Wolfe did not practice in this one. I think today's injury report is going to be really telling about which players could suit up and could not suit up. Usually, for most players, not all, but some of the common themes that the NFL has in terms of practice injury reports is that if they can log, or a player can log at least one limited session, it seems like barring a setback or if the team just doesn't feel like they're ready, then they usually play. So for today, I'm looking for hopefully at least limited practice from a guy like Latavius Murray or Sammy Watkins or Derek Wolfe in order to have the, potential feeling of, hey, all right, they didn't practice on Wednesday, but on Thursday it was limited. That's progress. If they don't practice today and then we get to Friday and they don't practice again, that is a telltale sign that they could even be ruled out before the game even starts. But for now, I'm not overly concerned. The Ravens do have the depth to kind of combat those injuries. You want to have everybody available, of course. You would want to have Murray out there and Watkins and obviously Wolfe as well. But hopefully the team can get Nick Boyle back. Maybe this is the week he makes his debut for the 2021 season. That would be huge. Justin Houston, just a rest day, no big deal. Tyler Huntley with the illness, I also don't think that's a massive deal right now. And Brandon Williams with a shoulder injury, I think this is a bit of a new one. I don't recall seeing him on the injury report with that prior. So, if it is a new thing, then hopefully he's all right. He'll be able to suit up. He's definitely struggled a bit this year, but he definitely is a key part of what the Ravens do on defense. So all in all, a pretty, decent injury report. The team didn't get any more hurt after the bye, except maybe the Brandon Williams injury for now. But the ones that I'm really looking at for today and for tomorrow are Murray, Watkins, and also Wolf to see what they can do. I don't think Marquis is going to play. High ankle sprain coming off of that. Yes, the Ravens had a bye, but it'd be a very fast recovery if he was able to play. And look, I would love for him to play on Sunday against Minnesota, but for right now, I don't see it. Maybe he'll shock me though, and hopefully it'll be a pleasant surprise for me. I hope he proves me wrong for sure. Let's talk about some Ravens quotes though, starting off with one from John Harbaugh to kind of take a trip down memory lane with the Ravens and Vikings matchup back in 2013. Now, he was asked about that game. Obviously, it is Vikings week for the Ravens, and that 2013 game, honestly, I'm calling it the craziest, wildest, whatever you want to say, the most insane 2 minutes in NFL history. 5 touchdowns in about a 2-minute span. Unbelievable. John Harbaugh was asked about it, and he told a couple of good stories about it, kind of painted a picture for people based off of what he was going with, and actually threw a tidbit in there about Jacoby Jones, where the Ravens thought that he could break something and the ball was there, but Jacoby Jones, John Harbaugh looked, and Jacoby Jones was talking to his mom in the stands, and John Harbaugh had to say, Jacoby, and he looked over with the shocked look on his face. He ran over, caught the football, and returned it for a touchdown. So it's kind of funny how those things work. The full quote is pretty amazing, to be honest. And that whole sequence, the whole 2-minute sequence, the Ravens scored a touchdown, and that was right around the 2-minute warning. Right after that, so that put the Ravens up. Right after that, Toby Gerhart ran for a very long touchdown where he broke Ravens defenders' tackles and the field. It was snowing. Fans were throwing snowballs at Adrian Peterson. He was not happy. That's a whole different story, though. But, players were slipping on defense. So Toby Gerhart scores, puts the Vikings back on top. Then Jacoby Jones returns the kick right after that touchdown. So that's already 3 touchdowns in like a minute. And then right after the Jacoby Jones touchdown, the Vikings get the ball back, throw a screen pass to Cordero Patterson. Patterson weaves around the field. He goes left, he goes right, he goes up, and he scores a touchdown. That's 4 touchdowns. And then the Ravens, they drive down the field. Marlon Brown, yes, Ravens legend Marlon Brown, the hero of the day, scoring the game-winning touchdown on a toe tap touchdown. It was I remember watching it live. It was nuts, insanity, whatever you want to say. You're probably right. So that was a nice trip down memory lane that John Harbaugh provided. But getting back to the current Ravens team, Lamar Jackson's very excited to get Nick Boyle back. He's a huge part of what they do on offense. And just, hearing Lamar Jackson talk about him, like, yeah, this whole offense, I think, is pumped to get him back. Mark Andrews and a bunch of the guys. Boyle's really rounded himself into a do-it-all player. We already know he's one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, but really, really kind of honed in on his receiving skills. And look, he's not the best receiving tight end in the NFL, but he has definitely upped those skills over recent years and shown growth in that area. So he's not just, he's a blocking tight end, but when they're throwing, you can ignore him. No, he can get out there and catch some football. So I'm definitely excited to see him back. Lamar Jackson said he's very excited to see him back as well. Kevin Zeitler also talked to the media, said that he is really enjoying working with offensive line coach Joe D'Alessandro. And it seems like that's a common theme. It seems like the players really do like Joe D'Alessandro as their offensive line coach, and he seems to get the best out of that unit for the most part. Now, look, no unit is perfect. No coach is perfect. There are going to be struggles at times, and I understand that the Ravens' offensive line right now is very beat up. But the interior guys, look, I think Kevin Zeitler's played really well. He's a steady veteran, came into Baltimore with that title, and he's shown that. He's shown that he is a steady veteran. So I'm pleased with him. I think Bradley Bozeman's played well this year. Same thing with the left guard rotation there. It's been a little bit more tricky over there, but it's really the tackle situation that's just been so bad this year. And it's not even because of the play. I mean, yes, Alejandro Villanueva has been an up-and-down player. Ronnie Stanley didn't really get to play a lot, and when he did play, he just clearly was not healthy. But Patrick McCarry played very well. Hopefully, D'Alessandro can get a lot out of Tyree Phillips or Cedric Ogbuehi while McCarry's out. But the offensive line does need some work. It's definitely not a perfect unit, but I do think that the unit can get better, especially as they hone in on stuff after the bye week. And Deshaun Elliott talked about Marlon Humphrey, expressed confidence in his teammate and called Humphrey the best cornerback in the NFL. And look, in my book, he's definitely one of the best for sure. And I think the whole NFL is like a what have you done for me lately league. And obviously Humphrey did not have his best game against the Bengals. Honestly, it was probably his worst. And it all kind of came crashing down in one half. Ja'Marr Chase worked him, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But, it's about bouncing back. And just because Marlon Humphrey had this one game that was not good doesn't mean that he's still not at the top of this game on a week-to-week basis, year-to-year basis. A lot of teams would take Marlon Humphrey if they had the chance. In fact, I think every team would take Marlon Humphrey if they had the chance. And look, it's about Deshaun Elliott having confidence in a teammate, and I think that's great. And it's not just this lost confidence where it's like, oh, he has the purple glasses on because he's a part of the team, and it's like, oh, that's my guy, and it doesn't matter if he's playing badly. No, Marlon Humphrey's been good for years, and I think that I have seen a couple people who have been slandering him a little bit. And I understand being reactionary. I get it, but Humphrey is still one of the best in the NFL. Deshaun Elliott echoed that statement, echoed that sentiment on Wednesday. And look, it's true. I'm hopeful to see Humphrey, and I think he really will kind of bounce back in a big way. He has Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen on the tap for this week in the Minnesota game. So if he's matched up with Jefferson, I think he's going for his revenge on another LSU receiver because he gave up a lot of yards to the other one in Ja'Marr Chase. So if he has Jefferson, I think Humphrey's going to be a key point in this game. And I think that even if Minnesota targets him, he'll have a good football game. We're going to head into our first break now, though. When we return, we're going to be diving into Crossover Thursday with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. But this episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving community since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family can come to reconnect, a place where classmates can meet up for a study group knowing they'll have dependable Wi-Fi and endless support of French fries and McFlurries. Win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, the home team, or the away team can come to recharge. It's the place you always look forward to stopping at on a long road trip or even to rest your legs and refuel. You can go into McDonald's after a Little League game or even stop in after a big sporting event. So head to your local McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. I'm loving it. And hey, Ravens fans, this is Kevin Oestreicher with an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about in Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code TOUCHDOWN and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill-up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TOUCHDOWN to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code TOUCHDOWN. We return here with our second segment of this Locked On Ravens Thursday edition episode. Your host, Kevin Oestreicher, still hanging out with you here. And we're now going to dive into Crossover Thursday with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. As we talk about this, I think really good Ravens and Vikings matchup that these two teams have on the docket. So without any further ado, let's dive into Crossover Thursday with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. We are here, Locked On Ravens, Locked On Vikings, another edition of a Crossover Thursday. Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens here with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. And Luke, this week 9 matchup between these two teams, I think it'll be a bit better than some people anticipate. I know Baltimore coming off of a loss in week 7, they had their bye. In week 8, Minnesota coming off of that loss to the Dallas Cowboys with Cooper Rush. Both teams, kind of going through a bit of a crisis period here, but one of these teams will have to come out victorious unless they want to tie for some reason.
Y'all are what, 5-2? It's fine. You'll be all right.
and look, considering all the injuries, I will definitely take it with this Baltimore Ravens team. But starting off with this Vikings team, Luke, we have to start with Kirk Cousins and just what he has been for this Vikings team this year. Completing 69% of his passes, 1,953 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. How impressed or not have you been with Kirk Cousins this year so far?
If you asked me this question this time last week, I would be like, yeah, he's been playing really, really well. And he was playing awesome. He was everything was accurate. He was in rhythm, and I think that's really important for him to be kind of in the flow of the game and be, the balls were arriving on time, and he was doing things difficult to defend. And it fell apart on Sunday Night Football. Really one of the worst games we've had from him in a while. And the thing about Kirk Cousins is he's streaky. So he will have a whole bunch of really good games, but whatever he did last week is not necessarily what he's going to do this week. So maybe he's in a cold streak and you get him in a slump. Maybe that was just one game and they turn it around or something like that. It's kind of hard to ever know what you're going to get out of him. But what you have to know about Kirk Cousins is he is a paint by numbers quarterback. He is very much an in structure, and he actually defends that as a part of his game. He says, I don't want to go out of structure. I want to prepare and then lean on that preparation. And he's just doesn't have the improv gene. That's the definition of Kirk Cousins. It's paint by numbers quarterback. A lot. The other metaphor I like to use is there are bakers and there are chefs, and there's nothing really wrong with being one or the other. It's just a different thing to defend. Lamar Jackson's a chef. He'll run around. He'll make something happen. Kirk Cousins, he's a baker. He follows a recipe, and he will follow it with unbelievable precision, fantastic arm, really good talent. He's got a little bit of scramble to him as well, but he's always going to stay on the recipe. He will never color outside the lines.
Yeah, and I think some of the guys who have been helping him this season, obviously the duo of Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Now, the Ravens faced another LSU wide receiver in Week 7 in Jamar Chase, and he went wild on Baltimore, and it was a problem. Marlon Humphrey was tasked with that assignment, and he admitted it after the game. He said, he lost it. So with Jefferson, another very talented player, lit the world on fire during his rookie season. Him and Adam Thielen make a very good duo going up against the Baltimore pass defense that has just not been very good this season. Do you expect the Vikings to go with a very pass-happy script, even if they do have a player like Dalvin Cook on their roster?
I would have to know more about your defense to answer that. Probably more run heavy. That's the way they like to tend. They like to lean on the Dalvin Cook thing and then do shot plays. So you'll get Justin Jefferson streaking down the sideline, and if you leave Justin Jefferson 1-on-1, Kirk Cousins will throw that go ball, or deep posts off of play action, stuff like that. That's going to be where it is. But they have Jefferson, they have Thielen, and I think they have an underrated wide receiver 3 in KJ Osborne, which they have never had since the old days of Jarius Wright or Cordero Patterson back that 2013 Vikings-Ravens crazy game in the snow. It's been a while since the Vikings have had a good wide receiver 3, but KJ Osborne is that. And he can do everything those other two guys do. Not quite as talented, but he's one of those grinder work ethic types that is just perfect for your possession, third down and Osborne kind of guy. That's the receiving core, and then you have Tyler Conklin, who is a medium speed tight end, and then of course Dalvin Cook gets involved some too.
Yeah, definitely. And the Vikings, they have very talented skill position players, and I think they can do some damage to a Baltimore defense. But I think also it's important to talk about the offensive line from Minnesota. How impressed have you been with them, again, or not with them, how they've really pass blocked for Kirk Cousins, run blocked for Dalvin Cook? How have they been as a unit this season?
It's been a bugaboo for a decade for the Vikings. This offensive line, it's never been good back since they drafted Matt Khalil in 2012. It was kind of downhill from there. But they have a rookie starting right now in Christian Darrisaw, who has, I thought, been pretty good. And not without his rookie mistakes, but less rookie mistakes than usual rookies, which is probably a good sign. They've got Ezra Cleveland, who is a second-year player. He's a tackle playing left guard, and he looks like a tackle playing guard. He's a little bit slow out of his stance and stuff, and he's not too used to that. And they also have a tackle playing right guard in Oli Udoh. The two kind of more seasoned guys, Brian O'Neill, he's been fantastic. He's the right tackle they just paid a huge contract to. And then there's Garrett Bradbury, the center, who I might be the last fan of his in Minnesota. They call him the Grim Reacher. He's a really good reach block guy, and he kind of makes it unlocks a lot of zone runs that otherwise you couldn't unlock against certain fronts, things you would usually have to check out of, but because he can reach block a 3 technique, which is insane, he has a lot of lateral mobility that really helps that. But if you have a strong nose tackle, and I don't know who you guys have on the defensive line, but if you have a strong, powerful nose tackle, you can walk him back into Kirk Cousins' lap, and that's obviously a lot more frustrating than the subtleties of a reach block.
Yeah, well, Brandon Williams, has struggled a bit this season for the Ravens, but hopefully he can get it back on track. He was bullied in Cincinnati, or I guess they were in Baltimore. But yeah, he did not have a great game. There are multiple plays where they were highlighted by Bengals Twitter accounts where Brandon Williams literally got pushed back and fell on the ground.
So unstoppable force versus movable object. Let's go.
Yes, maybe we'll see a good matchup there. Right, exactly. Moving on to the Ravens defense and how they can, or moving on to the Vikings defense and how they can stop this Ravens offense. Danielle Hunter's a very big loss. I think that can't be understated. Who are some other guys? Obviously, Everson Griffin is there. Who are some other guys who are going to have to step up in his absence against the Ravens offensive line right now that is also searching for some answers?
Yeah, Griffin's back. He was every bit the player he had been for us in like 2019, which is crazy because he fell off so much at Detroit and Dallas, but he's back. He's the guy. They also have DJ Wanham, who's a second-year player who I'm going to call him coming into his own. He didn't have the best rookie year by my account, but the coaches swear by him, and he actually had a pretty hot game against Dallas. So we'll see. He's a big unknown, but he gets to start now. And they've got a couple of other rotational guys coming in. They just picked somebody up off the waiver wire from the Rams, and they also have Kenny Willekes and Patrick Jones, a couple of draft picks that we haven't seen a lot from, but they're both kind of high motor types. So we'll see. Interestingly, Patrick Jones, so he played in the ACC, and the ACC has a million option quarterbacks. And so he's going to make his NFL debut actually in this game with Daniil Hunter out against the only option team in the league. So, or the most like option heavy run team in the league. So we'll see if that skill set helps him out.
Yeah, it's funny how those matchups work now. You kind of get a player who has that experience, so it could work in the favor of the Vikings there. But I think, Luke, moving on to the secondary, Harrison Smith, and it's all, it's tough. Xavier Woods leads this team with 2 interceptions, if you want to put a positive, maybe
Xavier Woods has been good.
Right.
Harrison Smith is Harrison Smith. We know he's good. He's been good forever. It's the corners are trouble, though. They don't have Patrick Peterson. Cameron Dantzler and Bashad Breeland are not playing with any confidence at all. Dallas, in the last game, got a million plays of just 12-yard hitches because these guys are playing so far off because they're so scared of being beat deep. So you either have to spend your safeties on helping those guys over the top, but then you can't use your safeties on anything else, and you're running cover 2, and cover 2 is really easy to beat. So, yeah, it's kind of a rock and a hard place with Bashad Breeland and Cameron Dantzler. If you want to attack the Vikings, you're attacking them on the outside with those 2 guys.
Right, and so how worried does it match up with players like Marquis Brown, and maybe if Sammy Watkins comes back for this game, Rashad Bateman there, are you worried at all that those guys can really do some damage?
Oh, we know Rashad Bateman well over here in Minnesota. So, and I haven't seen anything from him. He had his debut in the last game, right?
2 weeks ago. He's played 2 games.
2 games. Yeah, I haven't seen anything. So I don't know if he's playing up to the way he played in Minnesota, but obviously we're going to be scared of him. I think if you have an only deep ball guy, and I don't know, correct me if that's not what Marquis Brown is, but he's like the burner kind of, touchdown or nothing kind of player. That does play into the skill set of these corners. Like they will commit to defending only the deep ball. So if you don't have another pitch, it's harder to kind of punish that. But for whatever you have underneath, you can punish that stuff. I think what the Vikings are more worried about right now is defending the Lamar Jackson run game, and they'll probably leave. You'll have opportunities. I'll tell you that. Marquis Brown versus Bashad Breeland. If you want to take that matchup, you can have it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brown has definitely added to his game to the point where he can now run routes a lot better than he could at Oklahoma. And not to say he couldn't run routes at Oklahoma, he could, but he's added into his game every single season. So he's still that deep burner guy, and he can definitely beat you deep. But
right. That's like the way they want to use him, right?
Right. Yeah, it feels like they use him in that way, but they're also incorporating him in other ways. So it's the deep thing, and it's also they work him underneath, work him in the middle of the field, and plus they have Mark Andrews there, that tight end who can do some damage as well.
Of course,
they have a lot there. So I think it's going to be a really exciting matchup. But Luke, finally here, I want to ask about the coaching a little bit because I know Mike Zimmer is the head guy. He has his coordinators. How impressed have you been, again or not, with the coaching and just the play calling this season in general on both sides of the ball?
Oh, we got a white hot seat situation right now. With coming off of you go on national TV and you lay an egg against a backup quarterback nobody's heard of, you're going to be on. But he entered the year in kind of a you don't make the playoffs, we got to talk about it kind of situation. The offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak is green. I mean, he is raw. He's the son of Gary Kubiak, and they were impressed with him as the quarterback's coach, and they were impressed with the way he approached the game and worked and stuff. But you can tell the lack of experience is really, really hamstringing the Vikings right now. There's just lessons that you learn in your second game that you kind of wish you weren't learning when it counted. So there's that. But I mean, look, Mike Zimmer. The thing Mike Zimmer does is blitz well, especially on third down. He's one of the only coaches with consistent third down defense. Third down defense is remarkably difficult to be consistent, and it's because Zimmer disguises things in a very complete way. If the safeties are, rolling the coverage, then the linebackers are doing what it should look like. They're very good at faking stuff, and that makes it really, really difficult to read. So, that's the challenge for Lamar Jackson here. This is going to be one of the hardest defenses to read pre-snap that he finds all year.
Yeah, and hopefully for Lamar Jackson, It'll help that he goes up against that Ravens defense in practice every day that also has a defensive mastermind there in Don Martindale, who his defense disguises those blitzes. So hopefully that could translate over to the game. But yeah, Minnesota's defense is also one that if you don't diagnose that pre-snap well, it could really haunt you during a play.
Right.
The Ravens, for example, send like 9 guys to the line. One play, they'll send all of them. The next play, they'll send all but 3. So you have to kind of diagnose and figure out who's coming and who's not. So It's really important in that regard for sure. We'll head into our final break, though. When we get back, we'll be flipping this, and Luke will be asking me questions about the Ravens. So stay tuned for that. But we're back in better than ever, a new web interface for the start of the basketball season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, baseball, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. So wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, y'all, it's crossover Thursday. That means you got me, Luke Braun, at Luke Braun NFL from Locked On Vikings, talking to Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens at KOstreicher34. So I want to know about the Ravens. Obviously, when you get an AFC team, it's like, I don't know anything about them. I haven't had no reason to watch anything, right? So I guess let's start with, should I be more worried about Lamar Jackson on the ground or Lamar Jackson through the air? Obviously, he's done a lot of things in both ways, but if I had to pick one to really kind of angle my defense towards stopping, which should I be more scared of?
Yeah, it's a really complex question because what the Ravens have done this year through the air has been, really good. Lamar Jackson was expected to take a 4th-year leap, and he's done it. He just looks a lot calmer in the pocket, a lot more cool. He's just confident. And he's shown that sometimes he can hold the ball for a bit too long, run into sacks. The deep ball accuracy isn't completely there yet. But the thing with Lamar Jackson on the ground is that if your defense does everything right and stops everything, Lamar Jackson can still make a play out of it. So if you want to stop one or the other, the Ravens have done a better job this year at not letting that dictate a game. I know all of the narrative surrounding this team has been, if you can stop the run, the Ravens can't win the game because they can't throw the football, when in reality, they could do that a couple years ago, and they still can do it now. So
yeah, it hasn't been that way for a while, yeah?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So Lamar Jackson has grown every single year, and he's continued that. If I had to give, a concrete answer, I'd say to be more worried about him through the air, because the Ravens want to identify that part of their game as something that is a strength. They have done that so far this season, and they're really putting an emphasis on it. The run game has not been as advertised this season. They lost, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins just 10 days or around 10 days before the regular season started. They bring in guys like, former Viking Latavius Murray. They have Le'Veon Bell in there as well as Devonta Freeman. So it's not 2016 anymore, unfortunately. Lamar Jackson's still doing Lamar Jackson things on the ground, but his running backs aren't helping him out as much as they, I think, should be at this point. So for now, I think the Ravens are putting an emphasis on throwing the football, but at the same time, this is still a run-first team. They can just throw the football and throw it well now. They've been doing it, but this year it just feels a bit different.
Gotcha. And speaking of revenge games, Michael Pierce is going to make his return to the field. He's been out with an elbow injury, and he finally gets to go up. He should play this, barring a setback, he should play in this game. So that should be really fun. And that kind of leads me to ask about the protection and the kind of matchup in the trenches there. Because, look, no matter how high-flying an offense is, no matter how talented the quarterback is, you get pressure on him, and you're going to make it struggle. So I guess if you were in the Vikings defensive coach's room, if you were in a coach's meeting with them, and you were going to suggest, okay, here's what I think you have to do to get pressure on Lamar Jackson and get that offense to start to kind of break apart at the seams. What are you, should we blitz? Shouldn't we blitz? What are you suggesting?
I think it's a healthy balance in just figuring out what works early on. This Ravens offensive line, to put it nicely, is in shambles. It's okay. It's not been great this year. They have gotten really solid play from Kevin Zeitler, the right guard there. He's played very well. Bradley Bozeman also has shown some things. But the tackle situation is just dire straits right now. They lost Ronnie Stanley for the year after he played just one game. He suffered a pretty gruesome ankle injury in 2020 in the middle of the year, and he just has not recovered. He had to have another ankle surgery, so he's done. Tasha McCary, who's been playing very well at right tackle as a fill-in, had a high ankle sprain in week 7. He's not going to be back in this one. So now the Ravens are working with Alejandro Villanueva, who has been their left tackle for a while. He's a very up and down player. He'll look great for a quarter and then look really bad for another. They also are now seemingly working with Tyree Phillips, who was more of a guard at this stage of his career. He's kind of their swing guy at right tackle. He did not look amazing against the Bengals, and they signed Cedric Ogbuehi to the practice squad, a former first-round pick, formerly of the Bengals and of the Seahawks as well. He, I asked people about him, and the word was turnstile, so that's not a great early season or early indication of what he can bring. But at this stage, who are you getting on the offensive line mid-season who can really help and give you quality snaps? There aren't a lot of people. So the Ravens are working with what they have. If I'm the Vikings, if they can get pressure with 4 or even 5 if they want to send a guy and that's working, I wouldn't necessarily stress the defense and say, let's bring 6 or 7 and put guys in one-on-one situations with Marquis Brown or Rashad Bateman or Mark Andrews or whoever. If you want to take away a couple of those options, if you're getting pressure with 4, I'd stick it that way. But the Ravens will take some deep shots. But if the time's not developing for Lamar Jackson, if Everson Griffin is matched up on Villanueva and wins that matchup and Jackson has to run around and kind of be forced to do some stuff, that works out. But as I kind of talked about Jackson, even with everything played perfectly, the defense getting pressure with blitzes, without, he can still make a defense pay even if the Vikings do everything perfectly.
Gotcha. So let's flip to the other side of this, I guess, because the offense has had a lot of struggles, and they have a similar offensive line problem, right? Except it's made out of only tackles instead of made out of only converted guards. So that's why I laughed. Like, we have a bit of the opposite situation there. But there's that problem. Kirk Cousins has had some check down problems and stuff. But I guess if you can play disciplined against the run and do that without keeping, without sacrificing your safeties, you can kind of suffocate. You can choke this defense out. So I guess that is my question. Is the run defense good enough to not have to put an extra player in the box to stop Dalvin Cook, or are they going to have to leave guys one-on-one with Justin Jefferson?
Yes and no. I think it's going to depend on if Derek Wolfe can come back this week. He was designated to return from IR, and Wolfe was one of the best run defenders in the NFL last season, but he's been out with hip and neck issues. So he's been on the shelf ever since about the second week of training camp. So he coming back would be a huge boost to a defense. We talked about Brandon Williams a little bit. I know that he is somebody who, can be good, but also has struggled a bit this season. Calais Campbell's playing really good football. So when you have a guy like Calais Campbell on your team, you can definitely afford to maybe take a guy out of the box, keep your safeties high, and do what you want to do there. But at the same time, the linebackers, Patrick Queen, has struggled a little bit. He's now in a new role. The Ravens brought in Josh Bynes. The run defense, I think, has overall been solid. I'm not going to say it's been spectacular against the team with Dalvin Cook on their roster. If they're not stopping him, if they can't tackle, the Ravens have been one of the worst tackling defenses in the NFL this season. And if they can't bring him down, for example, that Jamar Chase 82-yard touchdown in week 7, it would have been a 6-yard gain if he was tackled. So if they cannot bring Dalvin Cook to the ground, they're going to have to put reinforcements in the box, and that will leave one-on-one matchups. But if they can fix those issues, then I think they can leave some guys out of it, and all of a sudden they could try to focus on taking away some pass-catching threats from Minnesota.
Yeah, it does seem like this one's going to come down to, can the Ravens fix their issues over their bye better than the Vikings did theirs? Because the Vikings' issues only got worse coming out of the bye. And if the Ravens can work that tackling, work some of those things, then I think that makes it like a harder challenge. I think last I checked Bet Online, the line was Ravens favored by 5.5 points. You got a pick in you?
For me, I think this is a Ravens win in terms of right around 5 points. I'll give it to the Ravens by a touchdown. I think that this could be a game that is a little closer than people anticipate. I think Minnesota does have talent on both sides of the football. Obviously, losing to Danielle Hunter is very huge for them on that defense. But I think if it does come down to a close game, I'm taking the Lamar Jackson effect and even the Justin Tucker effect over a guy like Kirk Cousins and Greg Joseph. Yeah, so I think if I had to pick a duo, I'm taking Jackson and Tucker. But, the Ravens, it's going to come down to the tackling. It's going to come down to if they can get off to a fast start. I think that's very important. If they can get off to like a 14-3 start, 17-7 start, that could really set the tone early, and the Ravens could maybe use that ball control offense to control the time of possession battle and take 9, 10, 11 minutes off the clock per drive, which is what they become really good at over the course of the last couple of seasons. So, yeah, I think it'll be Baltimore. I'll give it to them by a touchdown, but this game could be sneaky good, I think.
I think I'm about in the same spot as you, honestly. I just don't believe that the Vikings offensively have enough variation to fool an NFL defense that has remotely done their homework. And maybe you can overcome that if Dalvin Cook just breaks a million tackles and it doesn't matter what the coaches did. But it feels like the path to victory here is going to have to be out executing because I just don't trust the staff right now to out game plan John Harbaugh's staff. So I think I'm going to go Ravens with a touchdown as well. For more on all of this, Vikings fans, go check out Kevin's podcast, do a little bit of scouting beyond enemy lines. I invite Ravens fans to come hang out with me too. Kevin, thank you so much for hanging out here on Crossover Thursday.
Yeah, Luke, thanks so much. It was a blast, and I am really looking forward to this game. A big thanks to Luke for stopping on the show, talking some Ravens and Vikings football with us. But that's all that I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. When we get back tomorrow, we'll be diving into a full game preview of the Ravens Week 9 matchup with the Vikings. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.